Hey everybody, it's Alexander Williamson here with the secret history living in your aquarium. How's it going, guys? Hold on, let me get some. Oh, by the way, my nails are back. I've been digging in the dirt so much that my fingernails were just gross and I couldn't get them clean. And I figured I'll just paint my fingernails again because that didn't stir up any controversy last time whatsoever. Uh, if you guys don't recall, I had a bunch of people asking about that, what my grand statement was. And my grand statement was that I was bored when I did it the first time, and here I've got my mandatory little mask that I gotta wear when I go out. So I've got it's also a lovely headband. Matches my nails. Thought it would look nice for the live stream. So I'm gonna go back through because you guys, as always, have been chatting away before we start the show. Today we're gonna be talking about ethics again. This is gonna be a several-part series, and essentially we touched on I basically discussed the entire supply chain, all sorts of different angles of it, and how that affects local fish stores, their independent owners, how that affects big box stores, how that affects independent hobbyists, and new people to the hobby, as well as the indigenous people in regions where they've been catching subsistence fishing for a long time, and they also know how to catch these ornamental fish and do for a side, what would you like to call it? A side project. So, or a side source of income. And as we've stated earlier, according to Project Piaba, it's as many as 80,000 people in Brazil alone that work in that business. So around the world, we're likely talking about near 500,000 people have something to do with either farming ornamental fish, catching them, wholesaling them, transporting them, selling them in their local pet stores, things like that. So it does impact humans in a large way. But as always, we're going to say hi to everybody, see what's going on in the chat at first. And as I like to say, we'll get into the meat and potatoes probably about 10 or 15 minutes into the video for those of you watching this replay later. We're going to chat, we're going to do some coffee talk, and we're going to make sure everyone's doing okay, because this, after all, is a live event, and I want to be live and speak with those of you who are taking the time to be with me here. And I'll go over, for members of the channel, I have posted an outline of what we're going to talk about today under the community tab, but I will also be going, I've got my little, I'm actually organized today. I actually got a printer, and so I printed it out rather than just scratched it on 7 post-it notes to stick on a tank. But irregardless, we're gonna do the normal planned flow of the show. So we're gonna go through, say hi to everybody, see what's going down, make sure everyone's doing okay, hanging in there, and then we are going to cover these issues, kind of going down the list. And today we're talking about the ethics of keeping fish, and rather than the ethics of money and commerce and wholesale, and whether you're ripping people off or whether you're putting little stores out of business, that side of things, we're going to be talking today about the actual fish predominantly. So we're going to talk about how humans oftentimes have their heart in the right place, and oftentimes love kills more fish than negligence. I would say that it almost undoubtedly kills more fish than negligence does in the hobby. And we'll get into why that is, and how people, their heart and their head is in the right space, but they're used to keeping a dog or a cat or interacting with other humans. And fish are a very different creature, especially when you have an ecosystem that you've set up perfectly for them that mimics their natural habitat. So we're also going to talk about things like whether it's right to not keep them in a planted tank. I mean, is it cruel to keep them in a bare tank and just breed them out for their whole lives. We're going to talk about what size a tank, what kind of fish, the whole inch per gallon rule versus, having a 40-gallon for one betta. I'm not kidding. We have lots of people who do things like that. And then we also want to kind of talk about the ethical implications as a consequence to the ecosystem. So when we're harvesting rift cichlids from Africa, when there's very few left, and taking them out, unless they're getting into the hands of those very, very specific fish keepers that know how to keep them alive and well, is that an ethical issue? Or is it still an ethical issue? Should we just let nature take its course, kind of hands off, and we should just keep what's in the hobby in the hobby? We're not going to get into whether or not how that impacts the indigenous people too much right now, like with Project Piaba and stuff. Those links are posted in the last video. But in this video, yeah, it's more, we'll get into a little bit also just the model we have. We talked about it last time, but are we okay with the deaths associated in our hobby? A lot of people want to think that their fish store, their little friendly fish store owner, male, female, whoever they may be, that gal is, a sweet lady who would never harm a fly and she just adores fish. And then you find out that she's grabbing fish that are still alive with bent spines and snapping them so that finishes them off, and throwing them into a bucket 4 feet away every morning. There goes 50 fish. So what are the realities? And is that cruelty? Is that just part of the fallout, or I guess part of the footprint of the hobby ethically? And in the end, does it justify it if we're able to keep the genetics clean and then disease free and then breed more? And in some cases, there's actually, the hobby has reintroduced endangered or extinct species from the wild that have been kept in tanks for 50 years, and they put them back into the wild. So does that overpower any of the ethical conundrums going on? So we'll talk about that. Also, I wanted to talk about when and how we put our fish to sleep, what that point is, and why we need to take that experience as if we're sad, if we had a connection with that fish, then we need to mark that occasion, pay tribute, mentally and emotionally, but then just reinvest that sadness into a scar. It's like when you work out and you tear muscle, you're sore, got lactic acid filling in the cracks, and those muscles have pulled apart. Well, when they do that, then they swell up, they build. And so you need to kind of feel some pain to build. And over time, if you're learning, then it's not in vain. And so I wanted to talk about some of the ethics of, even if you end up killing all your fish accidentally in a tank, is that wrong? Did you mess up on a moral level? And we can talk about that. And I want your input too. So when we get to these issues, after I catch up to the bottom of the chat, so that's what I'm going to do right now, is I'm going to try to catch up to the bottom of the chat, and then we'll get into the topic. And then if anybody has any pressing issues with their critters, I'll try to answer those. We can probably go for 2 hours today, unless my wife, she may have to call, and then if that's the case, we may only go for an hour and a half or an hour. But also, if you have a question and you're a member, remember that you can message me. I mean, anybody can message me, and I'll try to get to it when I can. I try to answer everyone's. But if you're a member, you guys do have my priority, and you guys do have a little flag in my alerts. I've got the little green indicator, which will come up with some emojis and names for things. Something about it seems just too kitschy and cute, and I just haven't committed to what we're going to do. But needless to say, if you have a question and it doesn't get answered during the stream, please leave it in the comments of a recent video, or message us on Facebook, or crowdsource. We've got an incredible team of moderators and also just great hobbyists in the chat right now. So, all right, Water Flora, welcome. Ridgel, welcome. Oh yeah, the Aquarium Co-op has been posting a lot of memes in their forum, or people have, I should say. And you know, Rob's from Aquarium Guys podcast. His Discord, they do a lot of that too. So that's fun. If you guys have any memes about some goofy thing I do or say, feel free to upload those, or just something funny in the hobby. That's what the Facebook group is really for. Is just for us to connect as a community in whatever way you want to connect, as long as you're not. You can even criticize. I mean, feel free to criticize me. That's fine. I don't claim to know all the answers. I claim to know how I do things and what I've researched, and I make errors. So, and I'll try to correct them or point them out when I've done such in either the next video or, if I can, in the comments. But yeah, feel free to make fun of me at my expense, and nothing's off limits. You can say he's a big fatty with two zits and a black eye or whatever, and looks like what's red, white, and blue, and nobody watches his channel. No, I'm just kidding. So let's see here. I need a dab. What's going on? Muppet. Wonderful. David Rayner. Mary's Pet Palace. How's it going? Let's see here. Wait, what happened to... Oh, you know what? I've got stupid chat. I want live chat. I don't want that. Okay, there we go. Now we got live chat on. Greg, Joe's Tips and Tricks. Now we can see people. Chevy's Fish, Indoor Fishing Inside. And Mary, hello, my dear. Lori, hello. Fishaholic, hello. Peplin Creek. Fake name. Hey, buddy, how's it going up there? Alan Matthews. Let's see here. What am I missing? Oh, you love the nail colors, Kay Halliday. Well, thank you very much, ma'am. I love you. Dead Fred, what's going on? Derek, thank you for illuminating me about your name and the oil derricks and the Germanic kings and so forth. Alexander is also a name that is, well, originally Greek, but ties into the king, or king of men, or one of those things, since Alexander the Great's time. And when they took over England, it's funny because they took over most of Great Britain, but they never took over northern Scotland. Yet my family's from northern Scotland, and there's Alexanders going back to the 13th century when I did a lot of searching. So it's kind of funny that the Pictish ethnic group, which is different than the Celts, or Celts, however you want to say it, or the Normans, or people in Wales. It's funny to me that they then took the name from somebody who was occupying their lands. Drench Aquaculture, Chief Reap, what's up? Oh, Jess is here. Wow, we got a lot of people in here today. Good people. Jason's in here, right on. Jerry, how you doing? How's your son doing? I hope you're hanging in there. Roxanne, same to you. Hope you're hanging in there. Van Halen, Halen Bowler, what's up? Everybody's just saying hello to each other. Muppets got a link to the Facebook group. Oh, we've got all the best people here today. WTF MRB, what's up? Jason is mobile. Who makes the cheesiest self-deprecating jokes on FishTube? ALEX, Alex. He's the best. Thank you, Spirulina. That was my dramatic reading of the comments. All right, let's see here. Robert Banks, thank you. Says keep up the good works. Crystal's Pet Palace. Oh, you're just saying hi to everyone. Leo, brush it off. Painter. Hello. Hey, ladies. Janice Lundberg, looking forward to this interesting topic. That's what you think. I'm going to go on so many tangents and it's going to be so boring. Mr. Bill's Fish Room, right on. Chris John. Wow, we have so many people in here. Thanks, guys. It really means a lot that y'all coming through. Also, I wanted to give another thank you to that super chat on the first ethics video. That was really something special. Even the dollar super chats are always special to me, but you know, that was above and beyond. So thank you, Lawrence, if you're here. Misfits, Reptiles, and Aquatics says, first stream been able to be here for. Sounds like it'll be a good one. Giggity giggity goo. Yeah, it should be. Yes, that's because the Scots hated the Welsh Cornish, so I can see them taking the name of one of their conquerors. It's probably a stick in the eye, you know? Better a stick in the eye than a stick in the mud. I don't know if that's true. Aubrey Wright, what's going on? Mary, thank you so much. We got a 99-cent super sticker, and it's the cute little happy one with the sunglasses. The no. Shh. And then take the glasses off. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're too young or too old. And Simple Jack. Oh, you know what, Simple Jack? Where did he go? That jerk, he left us hanging. I bet he's off philandering somewhere. No, got to get my Dr. Pepper. All right. Oh, Simple Jack. Bonda Zumba Jack. I love that movie. Very clever. Probably the last blackface we'll ever see in a movie because it's making fun of blackface, making fun of whiteface, making fun of Australians in Hollywood. Oh, it's like Inception. All right, guys. So, oh yeah, and the tie-dye is back today. You know what? I was actually trying to figure out what I was going to wear. You know what you guys get? You guys get my tie-dye that is, this one's 17 years old. Uh-oh, I'm getting real risque. You can see I'm in my pajamas underneath. I've got 2 layers on because it's real cold out. But these are my my squirrel pajamas and boxer pair. And they're nuts. They're little squirrels with nuts. UG Aquatics, what's up? All right, well, let's get into ethics. If everybody seems to be rocking and rolling, well, clearly, Jerry, my shirts don't last either. There's holes in them. If I hold this up to the light, I think it would just turn to ash. But yeah. So, you know, this tie-dye, just to give a shout out real quick, this one I made myself, but there was a fellow by the name of Jerry Converse who used to travel from San Diego. He'd go to Burning Man and a few places out off the coast, but he would go from San Diego to Vancouver, BC every year in his V-Dub bus. He lived in his V-Dub bus, and he was part of the original electric Kool-Aid acid test and the human being and all these kind of seminal beat poet and proto-hippie events. And, you know, he basically, I don't know if he burned himself out, but he spent the rest of his life in a bus as this philosopher with free books that he just would hand out, essentially, and then made tie-dye at a very low cost. And he would teach you if you'd want to come in the morning at a festival, like we had Folk Life or, you know, like an art festival in town. He'd show up for those things and then camp outside of town or stay with people he met. And basically, we would talk. And I mean, when I was 14, the first time I met him, I was 14 and I was at Folk Life, which is like a festival. I'm going to end this tangent soon. Don't worry. So he was probably 65 then. So, I mean, he's got to be up in his mid 80s if he's still around. Last time I saw him, he was in his late 70s, still living in the van. And his name was Jerry Converse. He wore high top Converse tie-dye shoes and made tie-dye clothing in his V-Dub van. He'd set out all the basins in the morning and hang it up, in the summer, and then he'd go south as it got colder. But he was just a very interesting guy who would talk to you about philosophy, and I think he had a PhD in theology. So interesting guy, like very interested in Eastern mysticism. Mr. Gromby, yo, here fishy, yo. All right, guys. So now that I really derailed that, which is ethically wrong. All right, let's see. So ethics. Let's start it off where it all begins. You're in the fish store. Better yet, we are in Walmart or a carnival. And you see a fish in a fish bowl, and it's a beautiful betta, right? It's got beautiful flowing fins. It's rainbow colored, or maybe if it was a certain era, not now, you would see maybe really strong blues and reds and blacks and greens and things like that. And it was just the half moon thing was around, and you'd see them in these little cups, and you'd think, wow, well, every time I come here, they're still there, and maybe you see the same one a few times, and you think, well, that must be an easy fish to keep, right? And the same with the goldfish. My first fish was a goldfish named Elvis that I got at a carnival, throwing pennies into containers, and if you made it, you got the fish. They were feeder comet goldfish. Aquarium Cop, hello, my brother. How is it doing? How's it doing? How are you doing? I hope you stay safe. I saw the ugliness going on in Philly, and so I was thinking about you. That's why I was going to email you, actually. Please be safe, and know that we respect you and appreciate what you do for the community. So, in any case, throwing pennies in a fish bowl. I got the fish. I took it home. I left it in a bowl for 5 years. It lived. Now, that was my introduction to fish. I changed its water a lot, but I really didn't. What's the word? I didn't realize what I was doing was wrong at all, and the fish actually survived. Aquarium Cop, thank you for the upside down smiley face super chat. I appreciate it. I love them 99-cent stickers. They are rad. I wish they were real stickers. I wish they'd print out here and I could put them on the wall behind me and save them all every time someone did that. So, in any case, that is now an image that I feel like we've swung the far other way on. So, yes, it is cruel to keep goldfish and bettas, especially goldfish. Goldfish are really not, they're not an animal that should be kept in a bowl or even a 5 or 10 gallon unless they're very young. They need to get big. They need to have room to run. They're like Free Willy, you wouldn't put them in a bathtub. And they secrete some nasty biofilm compared to other fish. They make a lot of ammonia, inch per gallon wise. They poop and make a lot of urea and everything. And so you need good biofiltration, or you're going to have your fish just breathing in its own ammonia. And they're hardy. They can take a lot of that, but it's just not, it's not a good, not a good look, right? So, we will, Cop. You can email me at alexanderjwilliamson@gmail.com if you want, and then I can get your email that way. Or you can post it in some obscure old video, and I'll find the comment, hopefully. AQUATIC also, by the way, just joined as a lurker. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. For those of you who want to be members, extra content. For those of you who don't and hate my guts for being a capitalist pig dog, just keep watching. You don't need to join. Okay, so moving on. 40 Years Fish, hello, and Atkins Nature Aquariums, hello. So there was this backlash after we I say we because I feel like this changed recently. We still see the Bettas, Apocalyptic Adam, hello. We still see the Bettas sitting on shelves at, say, Petco or PetSmart. I think Walmart is done selling fish. At least they are here. And so I think that we have now the word has gotten out in the hobby. It's very Relic Turtle. What's going on? I feel like I haven't seen you in a minute. It's good to see you. I feel like it's gotten out the word in the hobby that it's not cool to keep a betta in just a bowl that's very very teeny. However, there is some truth to the fact that bettas are solitary creatures in many cases. So in the wet season, we're going to talk about bettas here, but you can apply this to a lot of treatment of a lot of different fish. So in the wet season, you know, they may have lived in a giant lake. LP Lurkin, hello, good to see you. They may have been in a giant lake, and it goes down, 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 down. And maybe they're in an inch or two of water, and then that's in a depression, and maybe they're the only fish in there. Maybe they're living off of bugs, and that could be a couple months, you know, and their water's depleted, but they're labyrinth fish. They can breathe air. And that allows them to survive these harsh conditions. You know, same with, for instance, mud skippers or chana snakehead catfish or walking or chana snakeheads and then walking catfish. They have the ability to get out of their puddle and walk like a mile as long as it's humid and then crawl into another body of water. So yes, I understand that, John Larson, too. When you see bettas for sale in Southeast Asia, they are kept in, oftentimes what they'll do is they'll take a long sock-like plastic bag, and they'll put water in the bottom, and then they'll twist it off after they drop a fish in, and then they'll put more water in, and they'll twist it off so it almost looks like sausage links. And it's not much bigger than the actual fish with hardly any air in it. And they'll hang that string, and then if someone wants something, they can cut it down and deal with it and redo it or whatever, or you buy a couple of them. But my point being is that there is some truth that these fish, they can survive their entire life in, say, 2 gallons of water. And that's not extraordinarily cruel, in my mind, if you've put in a substrate that is active of some sort, or plants that have a micro ecosystem going on with the microscopic critters. So I would say that it's up to you how small you want to keep it. Granted, I've also had some bettas with really good personalities, and that's when you start to see, like, wow, they really do have a different behavior when you have room for them to roam. For instance, cribs in a 10-gallon tank, oftentimes, or let's take it to a 5. I've bred cribs in a 5-gallon tank. That's not where you should be breeding cribs. I did it just because of some crazy stuff going on in the fish room, and they happened to spawn. I thought I was just holding them there, and there's no way they would spawn. But many fish, they need enough room to move before they even consider spawning. And so there's a lot of ways to tell whether a fish is unhappy. And if you're an experienced aquarium keeper, you know, you find people like Simply Betta or Big City Bettas or Aquarium Co-op, whatever. You'll find people who know the signs that a betta is not doing well. And, you know, a gallon of water, in my mind, is even doable if you've got the catappa leaves for their slime coat. You've got the right water conditions, and you know that a small jar can have crazy swings in temperature and in pH. And if we understand these things, in my opinion, and you guys can interject here, please, in the chat if you think that's just wrong. For me, I have several ways in which I decide whether a fish is being kept humanely. It has nothing to do with the optics of the situation. For me, whether a fish is being kept humanely has to do with, is the fish healthy? And this isn't just for a month. This means 6 months, a year, 2 years. I mean, if you keep Bettas a certain way, and they're always getting skin flukes, or they're always turning pale and bloated and pine coning, it's wrong. Whatever you're doing is wrong. However, if you have them together and there's jars lined up, they're all together, they're getting some natural light, they have at least enough room to kind of dart around in a circle a few times, and they can make their bubble nest at the surface. They've got their catappa leaves, and in my opinion, it's much more cruel to keep a betta in a 5-gallon tank with plastic ornaments and just pellet food than it is to keep them in a 1-gallon mayonnaise jar that has a stick with live moss on it and catappa leaf debris at the bottom and seed shrimp and bloodworms that are live or black worms. So there's a lot of variables that we're talking about here, and recreating nature to me is the bottom line. That is the goal that we strive for. And that is what, hold on one sec, guys. On that note, somebody's knocking on the door, which never happens here. I'm assuming someone dropped off something for my wife. She's always ordering things. Hold on. Hello? Oh. Yep. Thank you. You too. Okay. Sorry, guys. So, I don't know what she bought. She bought something. And I just tripped. She bought something. I hope it's new teeth for me. I doubt it, though. Okay. Ooh, you bought a 90p, UG. You're in trouble. Good to hear, Steven, also, by the way. Good to hear. Alright. So, the other thing people will say is, oh, it's mean to keep a betta alone. Well, I dare you to take a couple male bettas and put them together. Sometimes it works. You guys, I have a video with 40 bettas in a 30 or 40 bettas in the 40-gallon tank. And they're all fine. They're with other fish. They're all fine. I've had bettas spawn in a 1-gallon bowl. But what do they have? They have their natural environment replicated. They get water changes. They have catappa leaves, and they have live food. To me, those things keep a fish much more happy and invigorated than just simply space. Granted, I think if you have a fish that is active and swims a lot, you should give it space. However, I have many bettas. In fact, I bet we can go downstairs right now and find my betta in my 40-gallon breeder, and I bet you that it is in the corner, hiding in the, let's say, he's either in the Pleco cave, and if I lose you guys, I'll try to come right back, but hopefully I won't. I've been doing these streams earlier so that the internet stays on, basically gets less laggy. But, so, I'm guessing if we go over to the tank that's 40 gallons, that the male betta will be probably in the power head. That's my guess, if we look. And that's almost where he always is. Even though he has all this room to go wherever he wants, he's almost always in this power head. So where is he? We're looking. We're looking. Bueller. 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 Are you in there? No, he's not in there. Oh, wow. We have a mystery on our hands. Well, I guarantee you he's somewhere. So the other place that I'm guessing he may be is right here where I have a Pleco cave hidden. So let's check there. That's the other spot. Okay. I see you guys can't see the Pleco cave, but let's see if when I put my hand in, we can get some activity coming to the front. Oh, and look who it is, everyone. It's my Betta, who was in one of two places in the 40 gallon, and now he's going right back. So, I just wanted to show you guys that, yes, I have a Betta in a 40 gallon with lots of other fish. There's a misnomer some people may still believe that we've got angelfish spawning here. Someone also accused me the other day of animal cruelty for keeping these angelfish in a tank with quote-unquote no room for them to live. If you see the other fish darting around, you can see that there's room. There's actually at least, I don't know, 8 inches between these lower plants in the front. There's a channel here. There's space back here. There's space over there. And then there's moss that moves around. But somebody went on a tirade saying that these angelfish don't have enough room in this tank and that it was animal cruelty. So I always find it interesting what different people think about different situations, and it's up to you. I mean, what is your limit on where you want to keep your critters? I'm just going to kind of show some tanks while we chat about ethics. So let's next talk about, you know, that people oftentimes, they love their fish. And so what they want to do is they want to constantly be putting things in their tank, whether that's one of those little divers made out of plastic that, you know, the bubbles come up from. Fake name says, I bet Sergio doesn't agree. Most studly fish ever. Yeah, Sergio's actually upstairs. So this is Sergio's brother, by the way. That's Prince, and that's Vanity. She is the mom, he's the dad. But Sergio's upstairs. We'll go look at Sergio again. But good call on the name. Hey, Cassie B. And hey, the Yeti. So, in this tank here, I've been also accused of keeping endlers in a tank with rice fish, rainbow fish, gobies. So let me just tell you that the acidity is like 6.5 in here, so it's slightly acidic. The TDS is around 150, so not crazy high, but it's mid-range. And oh wait, we have a male. Oh, he stopped. Of course, we had a Illuminatus doing the whole little spiral around with another male and show off his fins. Let's see. Hopefully they do it again if we just kind of stick back here. But, so, what I've been chewed out for many times about this tank now is, and I mean that in a friendly way. You can always give your opinion, but I may disagree. So, what I've been chewed out for is that the fact that and also I've got Rasboras in here, and clearly lots of shrimp and snails, 3 species of shrimp, lots of gobies, and people say, you know, Alex, endlers need hard water. It's cruel to keep them in soft water, or acidic water rather than basic. What they may not know is that I got this strain originally from Lucas Bretz 6 years ago, And I've slowly walked them down from 8.0 water with a 300 to 400 TDS to a point where they can live in 6.0 water and still have tons and tons of babies and flourish. So don't always need the things that people complain about are often human logic. You want to look at things from the point of view of the fish, and then you also need the context, in my mind, for an ethical decision to be made. I've seen people with tubs that look like uh, the dirtiest, trough in a backyard that you'd ever see. It looks all rusty and beat up. It looks just full of rainwater and slime and mosquito larvae. But go to your little lake or a pond, and what does it look like? It's full of goopy junk. It kind of smells like mud and earth and mushrooms and a little bit of that muddy dead smell of beach. That's natural. Um, and we look at that, you see barrels. A good example is someone like Big J's fish keeping. If you look at him, I think he's got like an igloo ice chest as a tank, and he's got old drums and shipping crates and things like that as tanks in his yard, and they're all cycled. They have natural sunlight. They have natural bugs and insects to eat, and it has nothing to do with what they look like, yet people may say, you can't keep a fish like that. And so I think that a lot of times people care and they're compassionate. Their heart is totally in the right place. And it's because they're thinking like a human. And fish aren't humans, clearly. I mean, you all know that. And so you see things like for sale, and I don't have anything. There's nothing wrong with, for instance, a Betta hammock, but does a Betta go out and buy a hammock in the wild? No. They may get an Anubias leaf and sit on that, but it's not even pertinent to their reproduction or their well-being, really. I suppose maybe it keeps it off the ground and thus reduces bacterial infections a little. I don't know that to be the truth. That's my only guess of what it could be doing that is super beneficial. But it's not harming anything, so I don't have a problem with it, obviously. But I'm just saying that basically we need to try to think like a fish more. Try to think of the senses of a fish, and maybe that will inform our ethics a little bit better. I mean, did it look like my Betta wanted to roam free and swim fast? No, he hangs out in one spot. He has an entire 40-gallon that he could be in, and we've seen this to be true when I had like 15 different sibling Bettas, male and female, in this here tank before it was set up with the Gobies, and they all kind of picked a corner and stayed in it. So is there that big of a difference other than new hobbyists may crash their water quicker in a small volume of water, and things can go bad quicker or more quickly in a small volume of water? So I hope you guys get what I'm saying by illuminating that point. So next, I wanted to talk about the notion of, well, for instance, let's look at this Palauan riffle goby. Anthropomorphism, exactly, Sean Meister. That is exactly what it is. It's humans applying human culture and traits to non-human things, even inanimate things. But, so here we have a female on the left and a male on the right, Palauan riffle goby, from the island of Palau. And they are one of the only fish that lives in Palau. Palau is out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, basically. It's thousands of miles from the continents. And yet they've managed to evolve, swim in stream, and find a home. they've managed to climb waterfalls to get into the parts they want to be in. And yet, we are harvesting these fish from that location, and I have no idea what that fishery looks like. But I know that we don't breed these in captivity hardly ever. So, the next ethical question on my mind the other day was, is it right to take whatever nature has come up with? I mean, it's a very easy decision in my mind. If an area is about to get dammed and you're going to lose an entire stretch of river, go ahead and catch those fish in there. Get them into the hands of people in the CARES program or something like that, where they're going to ensure that the genetics and the fish are doing well. However, this is a pristine tropical island, so to speak, and these fish are one of 3 freshwater fish that even live there. They're the only freshwater fish that lives inland at all, and they've evolved to eat the algae and to climb up waterfalls and to even climb out of the water and shimmy up wet rocks and things. So I would consider that a indicator, or you could even say keystone species for that river. They monitor the algae, and right next to it we have the neon blue Indonesian goby, also a Stiphodon. We also have the electric gold one from another part of Indonesia. Now those, they live in streams with quite a bit of diversity. But my point is, should we be harvesting from these places where there's only a few species present? My guess is that Palau has a fishery and that they limit how many you can catch. And in fact, I've started to feel guilty that I have not researched it. And so tonight I want to research that and find out where are these coming from and how heavily is that ecosystem being impacted by us taking them out of it. Steve says, well, everybody, I have consults I'm about to walk in on and some tank treatments I have to do. It was nice being able to jump in and say hi. I'll be back in the stream soon. Have a good and great day, Steve. I hope your son is getting better, doing well. And emotionally, I hope you and your family are all hanging in there. All right, let's see here. Alex, you should test some of the local water parameters in natural waterways and turn that into a video topic. Seasonal effects and how they affect the fish. So, it's interesting you say that. There's actually a website that already does that. I can post that for my members. If you're a member, like I said, this is the kind of stuff that's bonus, takes extra time out of my day from the video, and I'll look for that, and I'll try to remember to post that. Somebody get on my case if I don't. But basically, I will post this website. It has spots all over the world, and it has every measurement you can imagine about water parameters, including like even copper levels or mercury levels, things like that, in some cases. But then you can tailor your tank to that. By the way, there's more babies coming out now that I kind of backed up. And while we're talking about this whole taking species that are endemic or rare, or they only occur in one place, and whether that's right or not, these fish here are called Somphong rasboras. Somphongzi rasboras. And they are an incredible story. So, Aquarium Glaser in Germany, or Glosser in Germany, came across them with some lamb chop rasboras, or SB rasboras. Basically some rasboras they brought in from Thailand. And they noticed, hey, these fish aren't the same as those. And somebody astute enough, out of an order of something like 5,000 fish, noticed 3 fish that looked different. Well, they looked it up, and this fish had been missing from the ecosystem since 1972. and the year that this happened is 2007, I want to say, in Germany. So this fish was missing for what, 35 years or something like that? And thought to be extinct. It was originally found in the waterways right within the city of Bangkok, Thailand. Also in some tributaries outside the city. And they were able to take 2 males and a female and bring this fish back from extinction. Those were the only fish known in the wild, and since then they had never found another one in the wild since those 3 that came in. And the guy who collected them and brought them in said he didn't know where they could have come from, that local suppliers dropped them off, and they could have come from anywhere basically in the region. So it's things like that, and then you find out that now we're thinking about, we've cleaned up some of the heavy metals and waste, the dumping of waste in those regions. And now we're talking about reintroducing this fish, which actually keeps mosquito populations down. I mean, these fish are very prolific in the wild. They spawn a lot. They're hard to spawn in captivity. But I did it, and I managed to get about a dozen of them. And I worked on it for 6 months before I got it. And that's a story for a different episode. The males are in orange, and the females are in the silvery copper and blue color. But I just thought that I would share that little story, that in this same tank, we have some species that are endemic to one stream, and that's it in the world. Another great story about that is panda loaches. China, notoriously not good at protecting their nature from business. Granted, they have set up a lot of parks and wildlife districts and things like that, but it's very easy for a company to come in and with a bribe and a wink and a nod, there goes a hydroelectric dam onto the river. Well, these guys live on one river in South China. I think it's either the Yunnan province. I think it's the Yunnan province, the northern Yunnan mountainous province. And they're found in 2 forks of the river. That's it. And they're another one that now people are figuring out how to breed in captivity. So is it right for us to be keeping these animals that may only exist in a couple places or one place in the world? Another one, the devil's hole pupfish in Death Valley. There's something like between 50 and 250 of these fish, and they live in a mud puddle cave in Death Valley. They're completely dependent on whatever food washes in, and they've likely been there thousands and thousands of years. Do we have an obligation as humans to protect them? Or are they not good at evolution and too bad for them? So these are just questions. I'm just posing questions. Some of them I have answers to, but I don't know if we should try to save every species. A lot of times when we try to do things to protect a species, we'll bring another thing in and mess up the ecosystem more. So nature seems to fill voids naturally itself pretty well. So I'm of the opinion that we should never tax an ecosystem beyond a sustainable point, even if you wiped out half of what's in the wild. In my mind, it should still be able to keep perpetuating. Beyond that, I think that's kind of the threshold for me, where I think maybe we do need to keep it as a backup, because there's a good chance that it won't be alive. If you killed 50% and the species would collapse. Brian Suggs says Neon Tetra has a thing on it. It's had it for 3 months, and I was told it could not be Neon Tetra disease. But what do you think different? It is pale white dent in it. What is it? Well, so I kind of want to leave these kind of questions for the end, but since I read it already, um, I don't know. That could be a lot of things. With neon tetras, they're put in pens. And speaking of ethics of how animals are treated, yes, tetras live in shoals of hundreds to thousands to probably hundreds of thousands within a mile stretch of river together. Neon tetras do. And yet, when we keep them in farms in a pen, they don't do so hot sometimes. Sometimes they get sick and they die. They get what we call neon tetra disease, which was kind of a mystery for a while. We didn't know if it was a real disease or if it was just. And by the way, this tank up here is full of crushed coral, but it's a glass bottom tank full of floating plants and a box filter. If you were in Father's Fish's chat this morning, it's a big old box and sponge filter combo. And these are my prize babies that I'm working on. Let's get a light over them better. That I'm working on getting back to their spade tail, tiger stripes, and pastel colors of every color that you find in puppies. And also I have some of these guys here, the Medaka rice fish, the Orites lapsus, and these guys actually have yellow. I've seen orange, gold, but I've never seen the yellow on the tail. And the males of this, there's 3 males in here that all have this same morph that were brothers. And I'm trying to keep it going and just see if maybe I can pull it out even more. Maybe I'll get more yellow or gold on the fins and keep the body that pearl color. We'll see. But this tank here has a very high TDS, and these endlers are being fed live food only. And they are eating mostly vinegar eels and micro worms and baby brine shrimp. So they live differently than the ones below. And I just like to keep them 2 different ways and show people that they can flourish either way. Now these ones I consider my quote-unquote kings, and so they will be the standard bearer of my line. Now, you can keep a guppy alive in a teeny container. I have a story that I have to sadly admit to. I had this bowl right here, and it was filled with water, and it was just an immersed plant tank when I was meddling with it. Well, I put 2 guppies in it about 3 years ago. I put them there while I was dealing with a tank in which I had dumped too much ick in. I had a bad ick problem, and it was a cold water tank, and so I had to deal with that, and I immediately grabbed the guppies that were out of there and put them in a bowl that was room temperature. Well, they were little. I forgot about them. I didn't feed them for months, and they survived in the bowl. However, you just saw the guppies going all over the 20 long, so I don't think it's super nice to keep them in a small container long term. I think you need at least 5 gallons. And yes, a couple singular males won't be quite as boisterous and active, but that's just an example of knowing your fish and knowing its personalities and the species' personalities, its traits. So yeah. Yes, they are platinum Medakas, for whoever was asking. Zen Ginger, what's up? Martin Dollinger, hello. Thanks, peeps a lot, sheeps. Peeps, sheeps. Abigail Ray, anyone here bred neon tetras? Yes, I have a video on breeding. I might be on breeding tetras, but for sure one on CPDs and rasboras and erythromicrons. It's pretty much the same for all those species if you want to figure it out. Young neon tetras look like eyeballs on a little teeny spine for a while, and they'll usually hide. They're not a very outgoing fish for the first month as a baby, and then you'll see them hanging out in the top water and in plant areas, and then they'll kind of all swarm back. But we won't be able to tell what species it is probably until month 2, unless you had a good educated guess. It could have been any of the little ones. They all kind of develop differently. All right, let's see here. Hey, Jackson Tax, how's it going? I hope you are doing well. Oh yeah, if you guys, we got 118 people in here, and it's fine if you don't like me. You're saying, Alex, get to the point. Shut up. Give me a thumbs down then. But if you do like me and you enjoy this, why don't you X out if you're on mobile of the chat for just a moment. Just a moment. Thank you. Just a moment. Thank you. Minimize that chat. Click that like button for me. Pretty please. Pretty please. That's all I beg. I beg of you. What are those black and white loach-looking critters? Fishymon says. Hey, Mr. Fishyman, count all my Panda Loaches. Yes, they're one of my favorites. They are like a mini Pandagara, indeed. We can look at some Pandagara soon. I have some more critters. These are 2.5 gallons. We're getting down there. We're getting into the animal abuse territory, people. Thank you, Jackson Tax. If something is becoming extinct, there is a reason. If conditions were right, it would thrive and reproduce. I don't mind taking them, reproducing them to prevent extinction. But if we reintroduce extinction, but if we reintroduce them back, yeah, something was off in the first place. Chevy Fish, very good insight. I tend to agree personally. Yes, the white cloud minnow or the what was his name? There's a name of a Boy Scout. Is it Tran or Tan? Trans minnow, I think. Tan's minnow was what it was called first. No, Panda Loaches are sweethearts, Mary. They do not eat anything, really, other than some planaria. They'll eat planaria, they'll eat hydra, and they'll eat, like, microscopic things, biofilm mostly. But they will not eat anything hard. They will not eat baby shrimp even. Not even day-old baby shrimp. I've never watched them eat shrimp. I've put them in a breeder box with, like, 50 shrimp and no food, just to see if they would do it, because I was convinced, like, there's no way they don't eat shrimp. And they don't. They're sweethearts, so. Hey, Father Fish, how's it going? Let's see here. Aquarium Cop, we got a $5 super chat. Thank you so much. We got a holy mackerel, 115 pals on chat. How many hit that like button? Yeah. Hit that lurk button, everyone. I wish I could change it to say lurk. You just punch it in and you're on lurk mode. So another interesting thing happened to me while we're down here on the ground. Let me use my little official aquarium. You can buy this from me for $18.95. This is a fish poker, and yeah, you can only get it through me. It's $18.95. You send the money to me, and I'll tell you where you can get it. But let's get a hold of the fish that I'm talking about in here. Come on. Come out. Come out wherever you are, little one. So you can see that we've got rice fish in here. I got rice fish coming out my nose. I've got different strains, so, you know, I kind of... Let's see here. Here he comes. Come on. Come on. Where is he? Oh, we got a shrimp in here too? Lucky me. Lucky me, oh my. We got more little babies that I didn't know were in here as well. But we had a hanger on. So what I like to do is I will gather all the plants out of other tanks, and I'll just toss them into these 2.5 gallon tanks. And these are really kind of my QT/hospital emergency tanks, or if I'm hatching rasboras or like Phoenix rasboras or maybe like Tucano tetras, something really small. I like these because I can just shove them full of leaves and I can get the pH down to like 4 where I need it. But if I'm not doing that, they're kind of just on their own. Let's see. Why won't he come to the front? Come out. Come out wherever you are. This better be worth it, right, guys? Alex, you're building this up an awful lot. It better be some epic fish that comes out. Well, here it is. Did it just go back? Really, dude? Really? Cut me a break, guy. I need you to do the show. Shine for the people. Hail the sunshine. Hail the sunshine. There we go. Alright. So this guy shows up. I need to gravel back. Look at all that fish poop. Ew. I'm abusing my animals. So we got a little Cory in here. And he hatched unexpectedly with the Medaka rice fish. So I just thought that was fun. I always like a surprise. Always good. Let's see here. Yes, Panda Loaches are great. Panda Loaches are another one, like I said. They only live... Yes, Tan's minnows. Panda Loaches are sweethearts. They do change as they get older, though. I must warn you. And they are very expensive, generally. However, I managed to get them on sale for $6 a fish, which... If you know anything about them, is crazy. Now look at this. They have these little fins in the front. They're pectoral fins, and then their stabilizing fins are suction cups. Where they meet their pecs, there's a tiny little suction cup in between those two fins, right in the center. It looks like a little mouth almost. And that's how they climb up waterfalls, is they've got one of those on their pelvis and one of those up by their head. And they can hold on to glass, they can hold on to anything. And so they're really, really cool little fish. Let's see here. They do change, like I said, though. And they kind of... There's two types. So there's one population that's in the northern fork of the river. Those ones will stay like this. These are the Northern Territory ones. I only know that because I bought them in years past from the same transshipper that sells to the shop I bought them at. I bought them from a shop that I sell Corys and Plecos and other critters to. But they these ones will stay a buttercream color, a little less white, and they'll stay black, but their stripes are not going to stay in the position they're in. The black turns into diamonds on them. So that it looks like they have a diamond on their side, left side, right side, and on their back. Kind of like a little zigzag, like a checkerboard almost. And then kind of a buttercream or off-white, kind of like that color right there. See, my nails are going to come in handy because the camera will focus better, and you can see the background where I'm pointing. That little buttercream rock, they get that muddled sometimes. But some of them will stay really white, really light. And that's really cool because the other line will turn, I mean, all the way to like dirty brown colors. And the black will turn to dark brown or kind of an orangey brown, rusty brown, like maybe something more like in this range. And then the white will turn like a yellow kind of, just it looks like old fake ivory that's dirty or something, like old piano keys that have been in an antique shop too long. Oh boy, I gones and dones it. I just kicked over my Dr. Pepper on the floor. Good job, Alex. Oh, and what's better than that, I kicked it over onto some root tabs that I just opened. Actually, it looks like they're okay. Alright, let's get back to ethics. Shut up, Alex. You got too many things on your mind, son. Alright, so back to ethics. Let's stare at the angels for a while and their parental care. So you see those white eggs? Those ones have molded. They have fungi in them, or they were never fertilized. Mommy will eat them, or daddy will eat them. And the circle of life continues. Uh, they learn over time to do that better over and over. A chopstick for free. Martin, you're missing the boat here, sir. $19.99. If you want a chopstick, you can order one of those from me for $39.99, but it is called the polypropylene fish poker. And you have to go buy it elsewhere. That's just for the rights to use it. Okay. Yeah, get onto live chat and not top chat, folks. It'll really help you enjoy the atmosphere and the wit of our lovely, lovely community who is chatting up a storm here. And there's no hope of keeping up with it. Not Nola Jane. Hello, Fish Rich. I haven't seen you in a couple whiles, so I'm so glad to see you. Fish and Flora, also glad. Let's see here. I'm just trying to catch up with chat. Okay. Yes, a good friend of mine. Actually, I went to a university called Booth University. It was a good learning experience. It's a short program, but if you're into learning how to help new aquarists give up their money, I highly recommend the Father Fish Boot School of Economics in Venice, Florida. Or you could just watch the Father Fish channel. I don't know. I mean, you could do that too. Okay, so we've talked about the notion of not wanting to take keystone species. We've talked about the notion of keeping fish in tanks that we think are mean, when really, maybe the tanks are okay. We just need to assess which species of fish they are. We've talked about, well, what we haven't talked about. Let's get into this. So, another thing we need to consider as a hobby is invasive species. So, us hobbyists, we've done some silly things in our time. A lot of it was done before the full effects were known to the world. But essentially, southern Florida, the southern Everglades, is an aquarium store that they filled with water when you go looking. It's like everything has escaped in hurricanes, in floods. It's definitely a mess. You know, there's pythons and all sorts of other critters too that are out and about. But it's something we need to consider. So obviously, the ethics of fish keeping. So I want to show you what's going on here. Do you see the female rubbing her chest and mouth, the corner of her mouth on the eggs? What she's doing is she's introducing her immune system to them. She's also rotating them so they don't get fungus on them. But watch. It's just like she'll use this little gland right here. Oh, she's scared of me. Right near where she uses to go to the bathroom. There's a little gland there, and she's rubbing the secretions of it, of her slime coat, onto the eggs. And this is inoculating them. Everything her immune system knows how to deal with. Oh, now she's attacking my finger. She doesn't like the nail polish. Look at that. She hates the nail polish. That's funny. Oh, he doesn't like it either. But if I do this side, she backs up. Oh, cute. Fish are so smart. Oh, yeah, get that nail polish. Get it. Get it. You defend those eggs. Get it. Get my finger. Sorry, guys. This is amusing me way too much. Bye, Cass. Have a good night. Boom. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Get it. Okay. Sorry, guys. So, yeah, something to consider is we shouldn't release our fish. I think we all know that, right? Don't release your fish into waterways. By the way, here's that betta hanging out right where it was still hanging out. And what's it doing? It's hunting. It's hunting. It's doing its thing. It's so I would say you could keep this in a gallon bowl, but make sure to give it live food and lots of plants so it can hunt. That's my ethical thoughts on that. Um, so, in any case, food is overrated. The other one I want to talk about is I don't know what to say about the fact that there's invasive species. Some of it is on the hobby. A lot of it is people being goofy and letting guppies go in rivers in Texas or in Spain or whatever. We spoke about pandagoras earlier. Here's a pandagara. Much the same as a Panda Loache, but much bigger. Good 4 inches max, 3 or 4 inches. Um, and they have some very pretty orange and yellow markings on them. But this tank, by the way, is all species are invasive. Well, that's true, Fatherfish. Yes. They all had to get where they are somehow. Meridule has a question. Are there any fish that naturally don't have any orientation? For instance, they can swim upside down or sideways, etc. I would say that, I would say that, maybe eels or lampreys, something like that, that kind of twists and turns. I mean, if you think about it, like even plecos, they turn 360 in one axis and 360 another axis on the other glass. But they don't really swim upside down, then right side up, then upside down, then sideways. I don't know of any fish that do that on purpose frequently. Some of them can do 2-axis though. Exercise. Now I sound like I'm from New Jersey. Aquarium Cop, welcome. Welcome back, my friend, to the show that never ends. Come inside. Okay. Welcome to the membership, sir. Thank you so much for joining. Once you come in, you can never leave. No, that was a good question. Kevin, how's it going? Yeah, like Fatherfish said, eels. I think that's a good one. Yeah, petricolas go upside down all the time. There's even an upside down Synodontis. And, then there's the African butterfly fish, which is upside down. I mean, there's some that look upside down to us, too. But as far as, like, rapidly changing, not so much that I know in all 3 directions. Because like I was saying, a fish rotates, clockwise, counterclockwise on the glass, if it's a sucker fish. And then it does that also on this glass, which is really the same motion. But there you've got one axis here, one axis there. But you don't have this plane in 3D. So I don't know. I don't know of any other than eels, lampreys. I guess gobies kind of do it sometimes, but really it's just the angle of attack to get food. So there's a lot that can change that angle of attack, and their mouth parts may work differently, upside down, right side up, or whatever. But, I mean, that's why they have their lateral line and their swim bladder, is because most have an orientation that is quickest. Maybe like a rope fish or a lungfish kind of does some weird twisting and twirling. So I don't know. Atlas, no, you're good. You're not a big fish person, but you love this friendly ethics class. Well, I feel like this one isn't. I'm not as manic on yelling about the way that fish are sold and the markups involved. I mean, today we're kind of just touching on issues. So the other issue, other than hobbyists releasing fish, is going to be fish farms releasing fish. And that's almost always accidental due to a big hurricane or flood. And that's where you get things like, you know, a bunch of cichlids getting into the Everglades. But probably people releasing a group of them is more often the case. There's a lot of nastiness that gets in the water during floods in hurricane season in Florida. A lot of like oil and pesticides and all sorts of stuff. And a lot of that kills fish in general. And it's muddy, messy water. A lot of times it's brackish water, which a lot of species can't handle from flood storm surge. And while it does happen that species get out during those hurricanes, and that is an ethical dilemma, and they have spent a lot of money on trying to mitigate various species in Florida and other places too. You see the flying carp or jumping carp all up the Missouri and Ohio River, and or not the Missouri, the Ohio River, and trying to think where else it's at. Great Lakes, yes. So, all right, let's go. Where do we want to go next? We'll take a look at this little tank here with some Corridor Venezuelas in it. This is a little 5-gallon, and this is mostly a shrimp tank right now. You can see that my short-nosed algae shrimp, if you guys watched last week, you saw that she was buried. So she's still buried right there. Still got her babies. And then there's the babies that she did have, the other one. They're around here somewhere. Yeah, there we go. They're around here. So they're just cruising around. They're teeny. And then we've also got the Neocaridina shrimp, both these species are from Aquatic Arts. And then the ram's horn snails, which I've selected for various properties. Now, this tank is very small, and it does not have a substrate that is active whatsoever. Might as well have a glass bottom. It just has sand. So what I do is I gravel vac the very top of the substrate just to get the poop and debris off, because really here it would take a very long time to break down and establish a layer of mulm, and then you'd need to never really disturb it to really get those benefits. So for me, this tank, all the filtration's happening right here and in the moss and in the water changes, as well as we're taking out nutrients and ammonia, nitrogen, nitrates in the duckweed. So I'll let the duckweed grow all the way across, and then I'll take it all out, and that removes that also. We've got another one of those little algae eating shrimp right here, the little babies. So they're all over in this little tank, but just thought I'd show you that. Up here, here's another view of another one of those Medocas with the yellow tail. So while I talk about this and how I selected these Medocas for certain traits, that really brings me, and I don't have a good example of this, but that brings me to my next ethical dilemma that we really need to face as a hobby. And this is a big one. And it is, do we keep hybrid fish that would not exist in the wild? So that's one part of the question. The next part of the question is, do we keep fish that are completely engineered, like glowfish? And even further down the rabbit hole, what do we do about fish like flower horns or balloon mollies, where you actually are impacting their lifespan because you've compressed their organs? Now they're bringing a lot of joy to people. Maybe these fish have a fulfilling life. I don't know. But there's a good chance they don't. A lot of them have health problems. And yeah. You know, Kay, you bring up a really great point. So she said, what are the ethics of indiscriminate use of medication? Antibiotics, where you dispose of that water. Well, that's a great point. So I'll let you guys chew on the freak fish for a minute. The idea of when we modify fish to the point where they have health issues. But let's talk about that. There's two interesting things that Kay's question bring up when I think of that. And one is, yes, antibiotics. So the other part of that is, what about humans? We take antidepressants, SSRI, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and then we go to the restroom, and that ends up in our water column. By the way, here's Sergio in all his glory for those of you who wanted to see Sergio. He's way in the back. He's got this female is who he's picked this week. This was his female 2 weeks ago. And the other blue one's been on the outs for about, that blue one back there with the red eye. She's been on the outs for a while. So the two blues have been fighting. They're sisters. The yellow is actually related to is Prince from downstairs. That's one of his sons. Or sorry, daughters. So we've got the three daughters. And then we've also got my cribs in here. You know, remember how she had Popeye a few months ago from a bacterial infection? It's all gone now, and she's got a scar from it. Her eye's kind of permanently a little swollen, but it looks to be getting a little better, so that's good. But Sergio, here he is, trying to come into the shallow part of the tank, even though he's too big. And ripping holes in my plants just to be a jerk, I think. I don't know why he does it. He doesn't eat it. He just bites things. But in any case, so back to the topic at hand. What happens when we flush down our own chemicals down the toilet? So in Europe, in Britain, the UK, they actually track cocaine usage by checking the sewer systems in the city. And they started doing it in Amsterdam, Paris, Prague, Ireland, Dublin in Ireland. So they do it all over the place. And what they found is that they can literally watch the amounts of illegal narcotics spike on the weekends and then crash on Monday or Tuesday morning, and that's from humans taking those things and it going into the water. Now, is it at a high enough level that it has effects on these animals? We don't know, but we do know that the SSRI, the serotonin reuptake inhibitors, they do have some profound effects on things like gender and behavior. They can make fish complacent. They can make them ignore their primal breeding instincts and just sit there on the bottom of the tank. So that is something we need to think about in our own lives. I don't know the answer, but it's just something to think about. And the other thing, Sergio is 3.5 years old, almost 4, I believe. So the other thing to consider then would be hybrid fish. And where I fall on this is I think it's almost always okay, given that they're not re-released or sold under false pretenses. So this gets us back to some human ethics. So for instance, these guys, undoubtedly, when they're a mini guppy, they're usually crossed with an Endler. That's how they usually got the smaller stature and frame. There are some that have been selectively bred that way, but these guys are very small for an adult male of a year or whatever, the 3 that are adults. There's also some younger ones too. But they're very small. And the females, I don't know where the big female is right now, but she's pretty chunky. She's still got guppy size, and that's an Endler thing too. But I don't see that harming anything. Although I do appreciate somebody keeping sort of the keys to the genetics. And it is really cool. For instance, in Germany, in the 1980s, they found some ponds outdoors that had been heated all the way since the 1890s on some sprawling estate of some ex-royalty when it mattered back in the day, but you know, their family's still rich. And they were able to find wild endlers that had been in a pond. And yes, they had evolved just through the selection of, you know, them breeding with each other in a pond separate from everyone else in the herd. Ooh, we actually have my mustard catfish in this little thing, and you guys have never seen my mustard catfish. I really want to show it. I have 3 of them in here, but they're very nocturnal. And I think I might actually upset it so we can take a look at it, because it's a very pretty fish. Got this one at Aquatic Arts also. But while we were talking about Kay's question, the other thing to consider is not just putting antibiotics from humans and other human meds in the water, but what about the problem of us over-medicating fish at every step of transit just to be safe? So a lot of shops blank medicate everything. So like, you know, Aquarium Co-op, they have a medication trio. But if everyone comes in looking healthy and he trusts the breeder, I could be wrong here, but last I heard, you know, he'll observe them in a tank without medications for a week or 2. And if nobody's sick whatsoever, everybody's pooping and the poop's not clear or weird looking, and nobody's got a sunken belly or flukes or anything, then why would you put them through the stress of dosing them with a gram-negative and a gram-positive bacteria, antibiotic, a antifungal, an anti-parasitic, a general cure type thing, and then an ICX? Why would you do that if they've shown no symptoms? And the answer is to save time, to be safe, sort of thing. And it's done with good intentions. But if they did that, the transit shippers did that, and the collection point holding company did that, there's a whole lot of stuff in those fish, and it's another ethical thing. So I suggest if you're keeping your animals in QT, unless it's something that is wild caught, or you know it comes in giant ponds, so like a neon tetra or something, and it's showing some symptoms, those I actually tend to, let me restart. Those I will actually treat sometimes with no symptoms because of how often you get problems with neon tetras, green neon, blue neon, and cardinal tetras. But the bigger issue for me that I've found is with catfish from the wild. They have very, very, very persistent parasites. So I don't worry so much, and same with puffers. I don't worry so much about treating them with, you know, the full spectrum of different meds. But I do find that treating them with levamisole or flubendazole or something like that that's pretty heavy duty is of a pretty good benefit for them. But when you do that, you really are stressing the fish. Frank Humuk, hello. And let's Cartridge Kid, how's it going? Danny, how's it going? Anne, how's it going? Let's see here. So another thing that's going on in the fish hobby right now, because of dumb humans, is that, and dumb humans both for doing it wrong. I mean, if you're going to do this, educate yourself. I have a video on should humans take fish antibiotics. And I'm not going to get into it. You can watch the video if you're curious about that. I'm not a doctor. I can't give you medical advice, but I can tell you about the situation. So, long story short, lots of humans have, and you can blame that on Obamacare, you can blame that on capitalism and people not having medical coverage, you can blame that on the dissolving of unions, you can blame that on people just not saving enough and it being their own darn fault. whatever you want to blame it on, there's a cause that people find it cheaper to go to a fish store in America and buy antibiotics than to pay the $250 to go see a doctor without insurance, for whatever reason that may be. And then they don't know what they're doing. Now, there's plenty of people who did know what they were doing, but you never hear about them because they're fine. It's the people that get sick because they did something dumb, that happens. Uh, and so, yeah, in any case, now we don't have a lot of the medications that we have had access to for a long time. Now we have to get a vet to write the prescription or whatever. By the way, that's not ick on this albino crib. It's iridophores flashing. It's little flashy pearly scales on her. And she a cutie. I can't get them to spawn for the life of me, though. Speaking of fish that wouldn't exist in the wild, these albinos occur in the wild, but they get eaten very quickly generally because, I mean, look at her. She just stands out. She reflects UV light like a freaking fishing lure. So there are lots of good meds you can give your fish, things like tea tree oil or just turning up the temperature or catappa leaves, things like that. But when you have a real nasty infection that is antibiotic resistant because of how long we've been medicating these fish and things since the 1960s and earlier, in massive bulk numbers in farms and things, there are certain things where you just need antibiotics. There are certain cases where you need levamisole or fenbendazole or flubendazole. And, some of the weaker medications are not going to cut it. They're not going to clean everything out. So it's a bummer that that's happened. And you could argue that that is ethics on someone's part, whether that's retailers, whether that's our culture for being sue happy, or us not making people responsible for their own choices. I mean, you could go a million directions. I'm going to leave that to you to decide who's at fault on which part of the equation. But it is something to think about that we are not able to have nice things because people break them as as a whole. Chemotherapy for cancer is life-saving yet causes terrible side effects and heart damage. Whether natural or synthetic, all treatments have consequences. Yeah, sure. I mean, I have lupus and I've had to be on steroids. I've had nights where my airway has swollen shut and I literally had to EpiPen myself. They had to put a tube down my throat because of how severe. I mean, you see I get inflammation very easily just from not sleep. I mean, it's bags under the eyes, but I also get just random inflammation. My old videos, you'll see where my eyes are like puffy shut from that. And they shoot me with prednisone. Yeah, it's a gnarly drug. It's a steroid. But literally within 5 minutes, my airway's open and I feel like I could go run a marathon. Same with epinephrine. So you can argue that Western medicine is evil and we should all go back to nature, but I think that's a silly argument at this point when we've, prevented things like polio we've eradicated, smallpox. Well, we haven't fully eradicated polio, but for the most part we have. There's some of it in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Central African Republic. We're real close to getting rid of it again. Things like malaria medications to get rid of malaria. So there's a happy balance between, yes, science and pharmaceuticals have the answer, and no, fish companies, fish med companies are just profit hungry selling things. But I can tell you it's absurd that erythromycin, for instance, that medication costs something like 15 cents to make a box of it in bulk. Yeah, we pay $16.99 at PetSmart for it. They don't even sell it at Petco because of the reasons I just said. So the ethics of that Are they padding that profit so that your local fish store owner can stay afloat? No. It's the wholesaler and the first tier manufacturing to wholesale, the generic people. They actually make these drugs for humans. They don't make crap grade erythromycin for horses, for instance. They make it for humans and everything. They make it for everyone. It just doesn't need to be checked out. However, due to the fact that they're already in the factory, oftentimes they can use medication that has been certified safe for humans. They're not allowed to sell it as such to the fish hobby, but my point is that yes, there's no real reason you couldn't take some of it. There are no quality controls on it after a certain point, but in theory, let's just put it, there's not a reason you shouldn't take some of it, but people don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to convert metric, or they don't understand what gram negative versus gram positive is, or they don't understand that an upper respiratory infection has a completely different type of bacteria than a tooth abscess. Things like this. So this is why I say I'm not a doctor. If you're not a doctor, then you shouldn't be giving advice on any of this. But I'm just saying, if it were the end of the world, yes, if you trace it back, a lot of these medications actually come from human factories. And we know the price of the medication is absurdly marked up for humans. So for fish, it's the same. And so you get 12 pellets, maybe 3 grams or 2 grams of erythromycin for your fish for $16.99, and it costs 13 cents, maybe 20 cents in packaging, maybe 50 cents in shipping. How about a haircut? I have been growing my hair since I have been in lockdown mode. I have not trimmed anything. If you go back in my videos, you will see that. Let's see here. I have people asking me to sell them biologicals for personal use, and I always threaten to report them. Thank you, Father Fish. I agree. That's crazy, especially because most people coming in that would admit that don't know what they're doing. You know, it's different if, well, this is a side tangent, but all of our antibiotics, and I mean all but 2 or 3 out of 180 some I saw in this report, are made in India and China. And they're basically ship on demand kind of things. Well, when we have a big world issue, if you guys go back to January and February, I made videos telling you guys stock up on all these things. In worst case scenario, yes, you may want to get some fish meds. Do not take them. I'm just putting it out there that you may want to have those long term for your fish, for food, for whatever it may be. And I said, why don't you start breeding the common species that aren't worth much, but that are really pretty that people want? I started breeding neon blue tetras. I sold those tetras for anywhere from $5 to $9 a piece when nobody else could get them in the area. People still wanted the high. I mean, they were nice ones. They were the diamond head ones. But I made a video talking about this. It's a foreseeable thing that goes on. And, you know, one person can ruin it for the hobby. Whether that's releasing piranhas into a lake in Texas or something, or that's dying and overdosing on some medication for fish. So let's just be smart people and stop that. Let's just stop that culture right now, for now. And if you have a problem with, yes, but the companies and our medical system is so expensive. Yes, exactly, Irish Hamster Man. A bit like the people who drank the koi algae killer because it had a form of hydroxychloroquine in it. Correct. Exactly like that. People have died. It's over 30 people around the world have died drinking pesticide or algicide, fungicide, hydroxychloroquine that's not the right compound. It just because it has the first same starting name, when it has a dash 5-MATPMT or something afterwards, that is not the same molecule, you guys. I feel like I shouldn't have to say that, but yes. And it's about education. That's correct. It's about education. And never release your pets. It's about education also. Like the crayfish, the signal crayfish in California, that now they have this crayfish that clones itself, and it's everywhere, and it's ruining the ecosystem. That's a bummer also. Okay. Now, what I wanted to touch on, we can talk about the other thing, which is banning species that are endangered or that can cause damage. For instance, we can't have snakeheads in the U.S. There's 38 beautiful species of snakeheads in the hobby in Europe, or sorry, not Europe, in Asia. And they're great. I mean, they're incredibly beautiful. I've also seen them in aquarium glazer. I don't know if they need special permits or how that works, but beautiful fish. It's a very aggressive fish, and the thing about those fish is a lot of them can survive out of water, and there are Southeast Asian communities that brought them here for food, put them in lakes and ponds, floods happen, they got out, or they wanted to intentionally put them in some lake or river that had things going on. So they put them in a lake thinking, okay, they'll stay in the lake and I'll harvest them. Well, they have tributaries and rivers, and they make their way out, and they can climb across land. They can do the father fish dance. Let's talk about fish, baby. Okay. The other thing, someone says, who is that? Ann963 says, I'm in Oregon and I've seen fish that were at least sold as snakeheads. That's interesting. That is interesting. Yeah, you don't want snakeheads in your local flora and fauna. But at the same time, they won't survive in Western Washington. They won't survive in a lot of parts of the country. They're not going to survive in North Dakota. They can't take the cold. So should we be able to have them? Should we trust people? And where's the line where we do trust people? So this is really, and this is what gets at the heart of liberalism versus conservatism. Freedom versus security. And I know that this sounds like politics, but it's something we need to think about in the fish hobby as well. For instance, right now, there is a law attached to the big funding bill, the HEROES Bill 975, House Bill 975, HR 975. And I had a link to it, as well as to all your local representatives, so you can say, I love this bill, vote for it, or I hate this bill, get rid of it. Whatever, I don't care what you say. But it limits severely. It says if there's a disease or outbreak in, say, guinea pigs in Ecuador, where they're from, that then you cannot sell them in the United States in pet stores, domestic guinea pigs. That is an interpretation of the law anyways. That could be invoked. Will that be invoked? I would guess probably not. That seems silly, but it could be. It would be on the books, and that's kind of scary. So it's one of those slippery slope things, but also it would bring up questions about things like arowana. You know, are we going to be allowed to have the Madagascar arowana anymore even? Or because it's not allowed in certain parts of the country, will it also, or certain parts of UN or NATO countries, will we say that then it falls under the same jurisdiction as what we're all trying to do together, and we're going to block it as a trade block so none of it can come in? And do you trust the average citizen that they can have that? I mean, we let them drive cars that can run into people and kill people. We let them have guns. We let them have babies and kids and take care of a human being. Are they capable of taking care of a fish that could get out and wreck your ecosystem? I don't know. You guys have to figure out the line between liberty, freedom, and security or laws and regulations. And that is what defines where you stand on the political spectrum, really. Total freedom, you can do whatever you want. You can go punch someone in the face, there are no repercussions other than that person may be stronger and come back and do worse to you. Or maybe you become the biggest bully. Total freedom. However, if we have a police officer that says, no, you cannot go punching people in the face, you have security, but you have lost some freedom. That's all I'm going to say about that. But we need to think about that in other aspects of our life. And we need to think about that at the basics. If you're all for freedom, that's a conservative outlook. If you're all for security, that tends to be a classically liberal outlook. So, if you're in the middle, you're America. No. But in any case, what I wanted to get to was the fact that arowanas, yes, in a quote-unquote liberal country like Canada, they allow arowanas. They have a permitting program, and you can only, even though they're a CITES species, which means they're regulated very heavily, if they're grown on farms, they're microchipped and tagged, and they're tracked the whole way. They're expensive, but they're legal. You're allowed to have them, and they're beautiful. I think they're cool fish. I think you need a lot of money and proper care. You need to show that you have that care. So that's why I almost feel like the fact that they're expensive is good. But to me, in America, other than in Florida and maybe Texas and southern Georgia, I don't think there's any way, maybe not even in Florida, I don't think there's any way an arowana would survive, quite frankly, with as cold as it gets. They're very, very warm water fish. So, yeah, that's just my opinion. They are pretty much extinct in the wild, especially a lot of certain Asian varieties. But a full-grown arowana definitely needs to have, if it's like one of the red arowanas, the Asian, like the kind you see that are like the red and gold ones that are the ornamental kind, those can get up to 6 feet long with their tail and everything. They can get, 200 to 400 pounds, I believe. 400, I think, is like the world record kind of size. But I think most probably get 250, 300 pounds max if you got a big one. I'm not positive. If anybody can confirm that. But yes, arowanas in Canada are microchipped. But I mean, so here's another ethical question, folks. We can't have those because they're endangered. So that's one side of it. But the other side that people argue frequently is, well, why do you need a fish that gets that big anyways? Yes, and the red arowana is extinct in the wild, like Father Fish just said. Overfishing, overharvesting, pollution, and habitat destruction. Also, if certain traits were deemed as lucky, and people liked having arowanas, especially in Chinese culture. But the arapaima is another, yeah. In Father Fish, you want the arapaima in Florida water? The arapaima is a giant fish, a beautiful fish. It is basically an arowana, little less violent, but a large fish that is very rugged and lives in South America, very big. And very beautiful. It swims really gracefully for such a big fish. And it lives in water that's so shallow that sometimes its back sticks out of it in these muddy little shallow backwaters of flooded out rivers. Pacus are another one that gets huge. Bala sharks are another one that gets big. Pruna sharks. And So these are some fish that commonly you don't really find, but bala sharks, silver dollars, um, red-tail catfish. You can get those at Petco. I saw a red-tail catfish this week at PetSmart, I should say. PetSmart had them, and they were $8.99, and they were adorable. They were the gold ones, the albino ones, that bright red tail, and they're so cute with their big derpy head, and they're all swimming around and just kind of like hamming it up, trying to beg for food. Well, those things get ginormous. Those things are, they need a 400-gallon tank at least when they get adults. So is it ethically right for PetSmart to sell them for $8 just because they can't? I mean, in my mind, if they're going to sell them, they should be like $900. They should mark it up there or something, or just don't sell them. But at the same time, do we want freedom or security? So it's up to you guys. I mean, that's it's in the end, it's up to you guys. Father Fish says, I have a red tail, 4 feet, ion about 35 pounds. Wow. 4 feet long. Ion, I was like, is that some kind of red tail? 35 pounds, that's pretty light for a 4-footer. I'm surprised it's not even heavier. But yes, they get massive. And I mean, another one would be the Goonch catfish, the Wells catfish. They are very magnificent to watch. And I have to say, when I went to Florida, I have never seen monster fish as common as in Florida. Like all the pet stores I went to had monster fish because one, it's warm enough outside that you could have a pool or a pond with them. Whereas where would I, in an apartment like this, I would break the floor. It would go through the 3rd story and it would crash down into the 2nd floor. It'd probably end up in the basement if I tried to fill it with water. So there's no way I would have that kind of thing. Lori has some great monster fish, predatory fins, whatever you want to call them. And if you can care for them adequately, in my opinion, then great. I think old swimming pools being transformed into monster fish tanks, that's great. Cool. More power to you. That's my personal opinion. So another thing I wanted to touch on before we get off of here, before we end, today I may not have time to answer questions. I may have to answer questions in the comments afterwards, honestly. Time has flown yet again. But what I wanted to talk on, hello, Jamie. What I wanted to talk on also is that, real quick, another thing to consider. Yes, I also, Jackson Tax, I keep mostly nanofish for the reason that then I don't have to worry about them getting too big. But what about, and no, you don't have to worry about chlorine residue in a pool hurting fish, because chlorine evaporates very quickly and it also bonds very quickly, so you really don't have to worry about it. Let's see. Millions and Sun says, at Secret History, maybe an organization can be formed to teach those 80,000 SNC, Central and, wait, what is that? South and Central Americans, how to cultivate, propagate fish, plant species sustainably, and to get away from wild caught. Well, maybe, but their jungle that they've lived in for 10,000 years is actually not wild. So the Amazon, as crazy as it looks, is a very manicured place. For at least 10,000 years, humans have been burning down things. They've been spreading ash and various nutrients. They know which plants and animals, they take dead fish by the thousands and spread them out up on the hillsides. and they till that into the soil. They aerate it. And the plants you find in the forest, the number of edible plants is incredibly out of scale with natural, very, very remote pockets where you don't find people living as much, or steep terrain, for instance. You find that they actually, sometimes up to 70% of the trees are something that the natives use for food in an area. So they have very carefully taken care of the Amazon, and the the soil, the fish, the fisheries, all of that they have an intimate relationship with already. It's actually since post-colonialization, when we used to get things like strip mining, logging, and cattle ranching in mass for factory slaughter, that you lose a lot of this indigenous knowledge. But I mean, there's places, just like Father Fish just said, in South America and in, I mean, everywhere from Hawaii, they carved out with stone tools. They carved out these massive ponds for fish, saltwater ponds, but the Romans did it, the Egyptians did it, the Mesopotamians did it, the Cambodians did it. So for food fish, they've known how to even manage and extract eggs and milt, and they've been able to even spawn fish. That was something the Native Americans here knew how to do. If a river became blocked or dammed, they could get the run going again. Now, so I just wanted to touch on that. But the other thing I wanted to touch on was, when we use a fish like a Siamese algae eater that's going to get 6 inches long, and we put it in our 5-gallon tank to eat some blackbeard algae for a while, when really maybe we should learn how to stop blackbeard algae on our own. Granted, if you have a tank for it to go in, then that's a fine use of a fish. Or if the fish store wants it back as a big fish and will take it, that's great. But that's another thing to consider that, people don't sometimes. And when we were talking about hybrids, ethically, the big issue with hybrids, for instance, I tried very hard to get erythromicrons or emerald dwarf rasboras and celestial pearl danios to, yeah, good luck catching it. David, you're totally right. SAEs are the biggest headache in the world to catch, especially the reticulated ones. If you guys need an animal to eat blackbeard algae, the reticulated SAE is the one to get. Not the reticulated hillstream loach, the reticulated SAE that has the little triangle on it, little black triangle on its tail. Those, when they're young, will eat like half their weight in blackbeard algae every day. And they kind of slow down as they get older. And if you put food in the tank, if you feed your fish because you're thinking like a human and you're like, the fish are happy when I give them food, therefore let me put gobs of food in it. This is what I call the neighbor effect, because this happens when we leave town and we tell our neighbors, just put a pinch in. Or even you measure it out. If you leave that jar out, they're going to feed your fish more. It's a compassionate thing. They think the fish are hungry and you've been abusing your fish, not feeding them enough because they gobbled up that food. The number one reason that people contact me, other than algae, and this is linked to algae, is, Alex, my water's cloudy or my ammonia is spiking. What happened? Well, you overfed your fish. It broke down into ammonia. Then you had a snail explosion. Then you killed the snails. The snails then were smushed in the tank and they exploded into more ammonia. And then fish died, and then they really caused ammonia, and your biological filter couldn't keep up with it. I mean, or some variation on a million different ways that story can unfold. So, the ethics of how we keep our fish also involves education. I think that a new fish keeper should not be keeping certain species, should not be keeping, for instance, 2 cribs in a 5-gallon. However, if it's somebody who has kept fish for a long time and they know the signs of stress, they know the signs of getting ready to spawn, they know the body language of their fish. This isn't just, I've had fish a year or two. This is really studying your fish, watching them an hour a night, thinking you know everything about them, and then they go do something quirky. Uh, and having that epiphany many, many times over your hobby. Then that's when I say, go ahead, put your fish in little containers, and do what you do. You do you. It's working for you. Your fish are healthy. They're reproducing. Fish generally, other than like guppies, don't like to reproduce if they're miserable. Stress is a very real thing in fish. So while it does look cruel to sell fish in teeny containers, and it can easily be argued that it is, especially if they're going home to somebody who's going to shake the bag and keep it in a tank and overfeed it, and it's going to get ammonia burns and never get water changes and has no stimuli, no fresh food, no tannins in the water, things like this, then yes, I think that's cruel. But if it's got a nice catappa leaf, live food cultures, we've talked about this earlier, it's different. So the ethics of situations, you really need to know the full story. And what drives me insane is when you go onto the forums online and someone says, you're a monster because you did this or that. You don't know if they were just maybe putting their betta in that mason jar while it was being conditioned for a week, being fed brine shrimp and bloodworms so that it could spawn and have more eggs. Maybe that's what they were doing. Maybe they were getting it sunshine for a suntan because they wanted it colored up for a show. I mean, there's just so many things, and online, people are ready to snap. And so I want to encourage you and our community, if you think something's wrong ethically on the channel, if I'm doing, that they're doing, please ask what the context is, unless it's something like someone just, you have the full video of them pulling a fish out of the tank and, you know, whatever, torturing it. Then that's pretty clear cut. But let's try to get more understanding and less judgment in the world. And exactly. Cop, exactly. My opinion of this channel and of all of you and why you're here is that hopefully every day I learn something new about a fish or about a shrimp or a plant or maybe a bunch of things. Maybe it's about the people that are making a living or they're not making a living off of harvesting these fish. Maybe it's that Segrest is carrying cardinal tetras now that are $1.29 more than the ones you get from whoever sources, but the Project Piaba ones are $1.29 more. They're $4.49 at my local store. If you go in and you inform yourself, you talk to the owner, you say, do you have any Project Piaba fish? And they say, you know what, I do, but they're $1.49 more. Suddenly that $4.49 tetra, maybe it's not that bad of a deal. Maybe you're keeping families fed. Maybe it's going to be a far more beautiful and healthy fish because it's not inbred, nor was it living in a pond with a billion other fish in mucky water with diseases and parasites. So I'm not saying all farms are bad or anything like that. And I think that if done right, it'd be great to get all our fish from farms sourced in country and to support our local industry. However, that's not realistic for one, feasibility wise, land wise, everything wise. So let's look at what's able to change. You know, Project Piaba started because this man said, haha, you know what? I'm going to go down to South America. I'm going to show that catching wild fish is not sustainable. The cardinals and the neon tetras, they're catching them by the hundreds of thousands, and it's not sustainable. And I'm going to do a study and prove it, and we're going to get the locals to farm fish out of the river, and we're going to save the wild fish. Well, he did this study and he finds out that something like 90% of the fish die in the dry season, dried up in the shallow parts of the river. Now, granted, there's some ethics about leaving that biomass for other animals to eat and for the soil to take up because the Amazon processes ammonia, nitrogen, nitrates, carbon at such a crazy rate. It's such a place full of life. It's evolved with those fish dying at 90%. Um, but that's the reason these fish have hundreds of eggs, and the reason they just throw them everywhere and they don't look back and they don't take care of them. Now, cichlids are different, usually. They grow up together, they grow up. You've got that model of have a million babies and don't care for them at all, don't invest any calories or any time, any bit of risking your own health, and the parents just cruise off. Well, then the far other side would be, humans, cichlids. We raise our kids until they're basically of the age of reproduction, and they're able to finish their life cycle, or at least start a new life, I should say. And that's our strategy. And we may only have 1, 2, 4, whatever it is, kids. We're not going to have 1,000 kids. But we have a high survival. And if you look at this curve on a graph of how many animals survive, other than insects, mammals and fish and birds and reptiles, very frequently when they're in their ecosystem that is balanced, in their natural ecosystem that hasn't been severely damaged or some major element taken out, you can pretty easily graph how many babies they have and how many die is pretty predictable because they end up with around the same populations surviving to old age. It's not exact, but it's a correlation that's definitely there. So there's different strategies for the same end result. And it's important that when we're supporting things like Project Piaba, that we want transparency and we want to make sure that that's not corrupt. Because the worst thing in the world for the hobby and for those Amerindians that are taking care of this fishery in Brazil, the worst thing would be if suddenly they were not doing the harvesting right, or if they were jacking up the prices and the money wasn't getting back to those initial people collecting. It would be awful. And so we also need to be caretakers of truth and justice. It sounds very superhero-y, but I mean it. In our hobby. And transparency is how that starts, in my opinion. And we also need to vote with our dollars. We need to vote with our dollars. And I understand that a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck. They're in debt, whatever it may be. And that fish bring them joy to their lives. They bring meaning to their lives. They may be the only thing stopping them from quitting this thing we call life some days. And I'm not going to judge them for going to Walmart and buying the cheapest fish humanly possible, or Petco or PetSmart. That's their journey. However, for me, I would rather save up. I'd rather catch a native fish and take care of that. Trust but verify. Thank you, Father Reagan. I mean, fish. But it's true. Trust but verify. And so that's one end of the spectrum. The other is you're a millionaire and you want to buy ADA products that are the sleekest looking, newest technology. You want to buy all the glowfish or all the rare fish in the world, and you'll pay top dollar and you'll fly them in overnight from Germany or wherever, Tajikistan. That's fine with me too. But just think about the implications of the things you do. Beyond that, let's not judge those people who may be in that situation. Maybe it's not their fault that they're just living paycheck to paycheck. Maybe it's something bigger going on in society that's nothing to do with fish. And so maybe we should stop casting judgment on everybody because they bought some fish at Petco because they haven't been informed of what's going on, Or maybe they have and they know how to medicate the fish and nurse them back to health, and they don't have a whole lot of money to spend them at some boutique shop. They may have their reasons. So I'm just saying, guys, let's stop casting stones on things like this when there's things for sure that ethically we can probably all agree on. Whereas things like this may be issues that we have differing opinions on, or we draw different lines on, or we think, well, tough luck, you shouldn't have fish then. Thank you. Yes, cast light, not stones. I like that. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'm not even going to go into it, is when we put our fish to sleep. And I don't mean that like nighttime Betty bye. I mean when we have to put our fish down. When is the kind time to do that? When has the fish lived its best life and now it's not functioning as the fish that it should be? It's a risk of infection and then thus killing more fish that are healthy right now. It's a risk of ammonia spiking overnight in your tank, things like that. I think we have a duty to put them out of their misery as we play gods, or whatever you want to call it, creators. As we play model trains, we play model Mother Nature in our aquariums. We need to consider these things. And yes, it's hard, it's sad. There's ways you can do it with clove oil. There's ways you can put it in the freezer. There's people who say that's cruel. There's ways you can just snap it. I mean, the kindest way would probably be to smash it with a hammer, but that image sounds awful, right? But that's probably the quickest way, completely obliterate its nervous system. But we think of certain things as cruel, certain things as sick in the head. So you have to come to terms with these things on your own on how you want to do it. But it's something to really consider, that you are putting your other fish at risk when you have a fish that's old and dying, especially a big fish, and it's not happy, it's blind, it's whatever. Now, there's plenty of fish that it can be blind, and they've got, if it's a catfish, it's got sensory organs all over. And yes, like Father Fish just said, there's ways to feed them to bigger fish too. You're literally putting the energy and the life, the calories that they had, that you cared about, right back into your other fish you care about. So think about those things. And the last thing I wanted to say about all of this on today's ethics, we're going to probably have one more installment of ethics for live streams. I'll probably do it next Tuesday in another week. And the thing I wanted to say as an ending note for today, other than thank you all for being here, thank you for supporting the channel. Super chatters, thank you so much. Those of you who have joined as members, I really appreciate it. I'll try to get you guys extra materials. Anything that I'm learning about that seems interesting to share, I'll try to get that to you guys. As I said, I might have to end this early. Well, my wife is home and I'd like to spend time with her because obviously I love her a lot. More than fish, you guys. So in any case, what I wanted to tell you guys though is that my channel, the goal, and I talked to Father Fish about this. Father Fish and I are very different people. I don't know if you noticed with the tie-dye and the living in Seattle and the being I don't know. I'm not really a liberal. If you guys if you know politics, I'm actually not. But from the outside appearance, I look like a stinky hippie. So let's call me a stinky hippie, and let's call him an older, refined gentleman of conservative nature, profoundly conservative. Yet him and I find so much joy talking to each other about the same things. And a lot of these things, we just naturally think about how nature takes care of things, and we both come to the same conclusion on how it should be dealt with. There are some inherent things that nature, that fish keeping, and honestly that just time can teach you. The other thing that I've noticed, we've talked about this before on my channel, is a lot of us are very damaged emotionally. Whether that's just we're stressed out, our jobs are crazy, we're busy, that aquarium is an escape. Whether it is you are overweight, your knees have given out, your stomach has issues, you have Crohn's disease, uh, you lost your legs, you're on disability, whatever it is, you have insomnia, you're bipolar, whatever it may be, everybody's got some issues. And in our community, we have some people with some very, very hard traumatic issues they've dealt with. We have people that put their lives on the line. People like Aquarium Cop, who has to go out, deal with life and death situations, deal with some of the worst things you'd ever see in your life that he sees daily, and then he has to come home and be a normal person. Well, the aquarium can give him solace. The aquarium can be a world he can control. It's a world that he can learn about endlessly and invest himself in, and then see his growth reflected in that aquarium. And I don't mean to pick on Aquarium Cop, but this is true for all of us. That's just an extreme case. A lot of us have trauma. A lot of us have things we're working through, we're dealing with. Maybe we need to stay sober. Maybe we need to keep taking our meds because we have an imbalance emotionally, and we know that things are working out better a certain way. Maybe we need to ask for help. Whatever it may be, I like to think that this channel, this hobby, this endeavor is about knowledge, compassion, and empathy. And it's not just about fish. It starts with us caring about fish. And if we care so much that we get emotional about our little fish in our aquariums, that are these small things, and in the scope of all the biomass, in the scope of all the biomass in the world, do you think a betta means that much? I do, if it does to you, because of the human element of our hobby. Because it reflects what you've learned, what you've put into it. Maybe that betta was your husband's and he's passed away. Maybe it was your son's and you don't care about fish, but you care about your son's memory, and so you've decided to learn about bettas. Somebody wrote me about that. They decided to keep their son's fish, and he's been gone 20 years. I mean, it almost brings a tear to my eyes. So I just want you guys to know there's people out there that think about ethics. There's people out there that are struggling, that love you. You are worthy of love, and you are worthy to give love to these creatures. Don't stop the quest for knowledge. Don't stop the quest for understanding. Get the context before we judge each other. And keep taking care of these little worlds that we've created, okay, you guys? Because this is a lot more than fish for a lot of us. This is a metaphor for dealing with some of the biggest existential problems in the world. You know, we have this fear of death, a lot of us, or the unknown, or what happens. But when you deal with it in your aquarium, when you see things come and go, when you see that cycle completed, you feel like you understand it a little better. And sometimes it hurts too much. It's too close with humans. But maybe watching it with plants and then fish, maybe that is what can get us there. And I just want to encourage you guys before I sign off to spread that empathy, that love, that understanding, that pause before we cast judgment upon someone else. Not from any religious place, not from a political place, from your heart, from you as a human being, from your gut instinct, because that's who we are as people when we allow ourselves to care and become invested. So I want to leave you with that. I really do care for all of you. If you need to talk to someone, if you need anything, come to the Facebook group, chat with us, message me, email me. Plenty of you text me on my phone. Talk to other people here. There are many, many people that have a similar situation to you if you're dealing with real life human situations. If you have fish problems, we're here for you for that too. But I just want to tell you guys, especially while we're talking about ethics, morals, life and death, what's right and wrong, that this is a strong community. And if this hobby can bring together people like Father Fish and I, an 80-year-old man in Florida who's lived a completely different life than someone like me who's lived, a liberal arts college life full of all sorts of bizarre decisions. And we can sit and talk every morning. Mary, down in Kentucky or Virginia, Cop up in New York, and we're all talking, we're all getting along, and we're connecting. And in the end, it's going to benefit our fish, but it's going to benefit each other. And hopefully it bleeds over to you maybe being a little happier, a little bit better off when you deal with the world at large. So put your heart into the hobby, put your heart into your life and those around you. Take care of your critters that are in your keeping. And of course, take care of yourself or you can't do that. And I think if half of us did half of that, half the time, our world would be twice as good. I'll talk to you guys later. Much love. Take care. Have a good night or day. I'll talk to you later. Bye.